Here we are, October 5th. We just had our first frost last night. It's going to warm up to a high of about 55 today. But this is zone 1. This is 15 feet from the side of the house. And part of the design called for a herb spiral with some of the kitchen herbs. And then there's a small hugelkultur, which is planted to herbs, flowers, some veggies, and melons. And this little area happens to catch the tailwater from watering the front yard. And as the water builds here, it kind of soaks in and then runs out that pipe and runs into the next series of mounds, which are being planted to perennials, some berries, some onions. Over to the west here, we have our rainwater, or our graywater harvesting system. We'll take a look at that. Over to the east, we have the chicken coop. Mulberries were just planted around the chicken coop to give some shade and free feed for the chickens. And then over 10 feet to the east of that big globe willow, there's the duck pond we just put a drain in that to feed the swales here to the north of the house. So this just gives you an idea of zone 1. We've got some grow boxes over there which were made from salvaged roofing material, and some hugelkultur swales that were done on contour and to grow some veggies. Let's take a look at the graywater harvesting system. So basically, when the graywater fills the first tank, it overflows into the second tank of cinders. And then actually we have these volcanic cinders that line the trench and go all the way down. And this is a perfect example of why Jeff says when you create a swale, you create a very fertile environment for whatever wants to grow is going to take advantage of that niche that you've created. We made these ditches this summer and did plant some trees, but didn't have the seed to get a cover crop in. And so, you know, it's really weedy right now. We're going to put that to our advantage because we're going to mulch that right now and plant some more trees. We've actually discovered that planting trees here in the fall is much better than in the spring because we don't have those drying, desiccating winds. What you're looking at there is the first generation of cattails, which have sprung up in our graywater harvesting, and from what we know, those actually filter water to like 99% pure. The farm grows cockleburs really well, which are a bane to dogs. You got to shave your dogs. I understand these are used in Chinese medicine for a number of things, but it's a good example of permaculture that when you do disturb the soil, those reparative weeds that are tough, that are deep-rooted, come in. In my pastures, I've noticed that have been disturbed, we get cockleburs the first year. We don't spray anything, and they seem to disappear after a couple years when alfalfas and grasses and other things come in. This is the swale system directly behind the house. So this is zone 2. This is going to be a tree growing system. And what we have here is the secondary mainframe swale that will have a food forest windbreak for the farm. And when this swale behind me is full, we have spillways that into a series of 5 swales with some excavated material for a road between the two, so that also runs off and fills the swales. And then at the very end, we'll take a look at, we've got the water tank, which will water cattle in zone 3 in rough pasture, and also be a soil harvesting system as we can take a loader in there and get the soil and bring it back here to mulch in the garden. The plan is to strip crop between the swales. There's a lot of moisture. This area is actually holding a lot more moisture than I thought it would on paper. So we're going to plant some crops, some pumpkins, maybe some corn, some things in between the swales. Another good example of why Jeff says that when you do swale system, immediately have a plan to plant it with your nitrogen fixers like hairy vetch works well here, clover, alfalfa. I had a short window of time when I had the excavator available, and it was a time when we were tied up on construction and other things, so didn't get the chance to plant it immediately. We'll not make that mistake again. As you can see, the swales are littered with cockleburs. We are going to mulch those, and November is a good time to plant trees, so we will make good use of the weeds with mulch and tree planting here pretty quick. This is one of the advantages of this permaculture design and how it was designed with the swale system. Right now I am watering a couple of winter wheat fields, and those are only going to take one shot of water. Right here in the late fall, or in the early fall in Arizona, it's October. Just planted stuff last week, but we can have 50, 60 degree days. And as this winter wheat is coming up, as we're watering the fields, swales are filling just with the tailwater. And as you can see, this swale is filling, and then we're starting to get a little moisture in this last one right here. So that will fill, and then it will run into our pond over there, which that is the lowest spot on the farm. That's over 100 feet lower than the hilltop over to the west. And that pond will capture our irrigation tailwater. Any fields that we're watering to the west will fill the swale system, water trees, and nutrients and soil buildup will take place there. We've got a nice ramp down in there where we can go and muck out the pond and use that desperately needed topsoil for the gardens. This here is the duck pond that's in Zone 1, filled with irrigation water. New feature is this drain pipe we just put in. To my right, 20 yards, I have the secondary mainframe swale for the farm, but this stays full of water year-round, and when we want to, we can go ahead and release the water into the swale and water the tree system all the way down with that nutrient-rich water. This is right here where I'm standing is a good example of nutrient flow coming just a little bit downhill from the chicken coop. You got to remember, we're standing in an area, I'm in Arizona, we only get 11 inches of rain, and it's the cold, high, dry desert, and no rain, no irrigation here, and you can see how green it is behind me. You can see what really happens with a microclimate. We got a little bit of shade from the willow, and we get all the nutrient flow when it does rain downhill from the chicken coop. So this will be an ideal place to either put a small garden with perennials or just a small vegetable garden be designed into the plan at a later date. This is a legume we've had good success planting the freshly dug swales as well as some of our raised beds, but this is lab. It's a legume. Cattle like to eat it. It's also a medicinal in Chinese medicine, but we have found that this increases the fertility. It's a nitrogen fixer and beneficial to our soil. Keep in mind, we've already had 2 frosts already, so everything is beginning to turn brown and go dormant. I'm standing on the far west of the property. This is the part of the property where I explained in the design there was a severe erosion problem with water coming off the state highway. We'll take a look at that. And 2 culverts. And this is where the monsoon floods were coming. Basically, if you look at everything up there, including that big cell phone antenna, all that runoff during monsoon season comes down this valley, comes under the road, and was hammering the property right here. That's the high point of the property, but this is the mainframe swale that protects the whole farm from erosion. So basically, we were fortunate this year. We did have good July, August, September monsoons, and we got a complete fill of our feature right here. This is a new swale that was put in, and you can see up there I have a drain pipe. That drain pipe is not enough volume to handle the outflow when it's really raining and full. So basically I have a spillway over the top of that drain pipe that is a foot lower than this road because we don't want the water to back up onto the road. But when the pipe is full into the swale, the water can spill over and still give us 3 feet of freeboard below this dam wall. On the other side of the dam wall, you can see that this area is now stabilized. This first field is planted to alfalfa, and then the next 2 I just planted to winter wheat. So since we now have this stabilized, we can turn these into some productive fields. This is the holding tank on the far north end of the swale. So basically when the monsoons hit, they fill that first dam we just looked at. The water comes over our spillway, comes down to the back of the farm, fills this tank. I put a release valve with baffles at the bottom of this holding tank, and we're able to hold this water because we don't need it when it comes. The ground's so saturated in July, August. Hold this water, and then we can get an early irrigation in the spring because the irrigation on this farm doesn't typically start till May, middle of May. So not only are we able to prevent the farm from eroding and washing away like it's done for the last 100 years, but we're saving this water and then hydrating the land later when it can use it. When this feature fills, I have a spillway right there, which spills into a continuation of this swale. You can see this land here is not very good. It's got a lot of a bentonite clay. But this swale goes all the way out to the end there, and we have a level spillway at the end, and then the water runs down that hill where that light patch of grass is. That light patch of grass is a little pond that collects the overflow. I have trees planted there, and then that pond ties into the central swale, which that is our primary budding young food forest, which goes all the way back to where the houses are and acts as a primary windbreak for the rough pasture on the other side of that feature. So what we're looking here is the part of the design that was implemented just 2 weeks ago. We have water available to this white pipe, and you can see that there's a small pond that fills. That pond will be a small fish growing pond. The water spills out on the right hand side of that pond and fills the swale below it. That swale will slowly fill and soak into the mound. Trees are going to be planted next month when they're dormant. When the first swale fills, we have a spillway that runs into each successive swale down the hill. And at the very bottom, we have a large pond, which will also be a fish growing system. And the water will be recirculated back up to the smaller pond with a small solar pump. Let's talk through now a final panoramic shot of the design plan. We're standing on top of the perlite concrete roof. What you see at the base of that hill, that is the first major mainframe swale. That's the swale that protects the farm from the major monsoons that come off the state highway, and it runs the water down that berm all the way to the back where that water can be stored and then piped down to this lower field, the cow pasture, for irrigation purposes. You got a greenhouse tree nursery right behind us in zone 1, and then we have the secondary swale, which is just this side of that white pipe in the green mobile chicken coop. That is the major food forest for the farm. That's about 20 yards wide and planted with apples, peaches, plums, willows, cottonwoods, nitrogen fixing trees like honey locust. There's mulberries in there, blackberries. And then on the other side of this row of poplars, There is the brand new swale system, major tree growing system in Zone 2, and our low part on the farm where we do our soil harvesting.